Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts.
99 people of interest, 99 photographs, 99 mugshoty type things.
I know, it's a nightmare for editorial purposes.
It's a kind of good sort of slogan though, isn't it? 99, it's better than the other numbers.
Yeah, of 99 problems, but...
Yeah.
So basically the Gardaí took the unusual step. They had a press conference and they were speaking about the Dublin riots last year. It was also kind of in the context of it's going to be a year on November 23rd. So hard to believe that, but there's always been a massive investigation. So there's lots of facts and figures, but as part of that, there's 99 people that they have yet to identify that they want to know. They basically want to rule them in or out in relation to this investigation. They said that these riots basically really had an impact on the reputation of Dublin City, and they're determined to bring them all to justice. So they, as part of that, obviously they've released these images. They put them up on Gardai, but we actually couldn't get into the website for a while because obviously of the volume of interest.
It crashed.
They crashed. Well, from my side it crashed, and there's a few other people
and
in the newsroom.
And who's going to be so interested in the general public or?
Yeah, so they basically want the general public to know, to have a look and see if they recognise anybody. And then I suppose that has its risks as well, because you might have people, having nefarious reasons for doing that. But also they want people that are identified that might be like, oh, I had nothing to do with this. I was
part of the ones maybe going around running away with sort of stuff under their arms.
Well, that's what we were saying in the newsroom, because they do say in the press conference that we basically want you to identify yourself and rule yourself out.
Yeah.
But we don't think the people carrying the box of Essex runners and carrying the white runners are going to be coming forward and saying, oh, I wasn't involved.
But imagine you weren't, and you just bought Essex runners earlier in the day, and you're running for like hell with your box of Essex runners.
Put them on to run away faster. Yeah, and unfortunately,
then you'd have your receight.
Exactly. Well, that's
or
you'd
have your credit card, whatever, on your phone that would show that you'd done that. But
exactly. So they might do that because there could be one or two of those examples, but I'd be surprised if
I'd be surprised too
if there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So basically, as part of this development, they spoke about the whole investigation. So there's been 57 people arrested in the last 12 months and 53 were charged with that. I think 14 were before the district court on, these are wide-ranging offences. So you have the criminal damage, the arson, all of those, but then you also have the looting and people going into shops and that kind of thing. So there has been, a lot of people charged, and there were 3 people arrested yesterday. So it is
charged. Did they give a detail on how many are convicted or how many of those cases have been processed?
So they said that there's 53 people charged, and then I think 14 have been before the district court. So there has been people convicted in terms of the district court offences. So I don't believe that anybody has been jailed as a result of this. But there was a guy, Declan Donaghy is his name. He was the first person convicted in front of the circuit court. And he is going to be sentenced tomorrow on Wednesday. So he actually told, as part of his mitigation, that he was really upset because the incident earlier in the day which sparked this, the incident on Parnell Street at the school, he was saying that he knew a child in the school and that he was so upset that this is where all this came from.
Do you know what? Let's remind ourselves about what happened that day, because that course that had sparked it. Yeah,
but now this guy did burn out a Garda car, and that was part of his crime, but he did say that he was deeply upset. So basically on November 23rd around lunchtime there was an incident outside a school on Parnell Street where there were several care at the school. I don't think she was a teacher. I think was she a crash worker near the school. She was attacked, she was stabbed, and then there was a couple of children stabbed as well. One child in particular was really seriously injured, and only in recent times the parents have said I think the child is now has been released from hospital, but still has a long road ahead of them.
Yeah, we did a podcast on a statement the family gave because there was a lot of money collected for them. I think they felt they had to give the public an update on it, and they have said the child will never be the same?
No, I don't believe so. And yeah, it's a GoFundMe page because obviously there's been a lot of money raised for her care. So the parents have been keeping people in the loop there. Now, she is doing, I think, well, but there's a lot of, in terms of skills to be relearned and all that kind of thing. So obviously then there was a person arrested, and that was earlier in the day. And then that just stemmed from, there was obviously a lot of different theories going around about who the person was and why that happened. So then,
and that person was arrested fairly quickly. So the media were reporting the story as such that this had happened, but social media went crazy.
Social media went crazy, and actually the guards do it is referenced in reporting by Ken Foyne, Robin Schiller, that they were running a kind of parallel investigation into incitement to hatred offences from all of this that happened online. But I don't think there's been any people before the courts in that case, in that respect yet.
They suspected that this was an organised kind of a...
Yeah, well, there was people basically saying, let's congregate in Dublin city centre. And it kind of started up around the top of Parnell Street, very close to that school, you know, at the top of Connell Street near the monument.
The Ambassador Theatre.
It did start there. And then we did have reporters down there. We pulled them back at one point because it was getting very hairy. But there had been kind of these isolated incidents in the run-up, you know, within around that same similar time. Like, these things have happened before where, you know, protesters, some people call it a protest, but they're just there to create violence, and, you know, it does get out of control. But I think so I don't know, you know, but then it obviously continued to escalate to the point where it was widespread across the city. And this, I think, the first sort of initial gathering that caused concern for the guards started around 4, and then it went on till midnight until the city was brought into control. So
there was the one gathering at the top there, we're talking about the Ambassador, and was there other locations, there were other groupings gathering, or did they all come from there and start making their way down O'Connell Street?
I think it seemed to begin there, because I actually was going across town, or I was crossing O'Connell Bridge further down
that night,
around 5:30 or so, or 6. No, I think it was around 6, probably later. And there was violence up the other end, but it hadn't really spilled down. So I think it kind of it started to move its way down. Then some more people got involved, and there was obviously calls on social media, and then the guards. I think the Lewis then was obviously that crosses over there. So there was a Lewis affected, that was stalled, that was damaged, and then there was Gardai basically. I think there was criticism in the wake of, you know, not having enough Gardai there at that particular pinch point. So there was Gardai being driven back, and the crowds were getting more. So then it kind of spilled out over to O'Connell Bridge, and that's where there was buses set alight there. Yeah, I remember seeing that later on. And
what happened? Where were you at?
Well, I was working. We obviously were very close. Talbot Street was also kind of affected as well later on. So I was in the office, but I have to come clean because the lads downstairs won't allow me not to. But basically, I went to get my hair done across the city. So it was
of all days.
I think it was, my appointment was at like around 7. So I was walking across, and obviously we were reporting on the Parnell Street.
Yeah.
We were reporting on that. We were reporting on the violence breaking out. But like at that point, the city, the other side was quiet. So I walked across.
And you needed your hair done, obviously.
Yeah, well, I had an appointment. It was, you know, it was quite a fancy hair salon.
I understand.
So you know when you pay, and since COVID, you have to pay a large deposit. So I paid like €50. So I was like, I was going, and it needed to be done as well.
Through rioters or whatever you had.
Yeah, well, this is what everyone says. But at that time, it was quiet there, in my defence. So I will go across sitting in the chair, and then the hairdresser's showing me all these videos on Twitter. And I was like, holy God. I was like, oh my God. Because obviously we had been reporting on it, and then it did really escalate out of control. And then we were in touch with, obviously, Niall. He was at home putting stuff, and then I was on the phone to him, and he was like, get out of town. So this is after the appointment. And I was on Grafton Street at this point, which was very quiet. Yeah. And I went to, you know, I was like, okay, I better get out of town. And looked in my bag. My wallet wasn't there. I was doing an Donald on it. So I was like, I'm after leaving my wallet in the office on Talbot Street.
Eimear.
On the other side where all the violence was kicking off. And there was nobody at home. So it wasn't my wallet, it was my house keys.
Oh, for goodness.
There was nobody at home, and so I've no way of getting home without my house keys. So I had to go back and walked back, got down as far as Pearse Street, and there was complete Gardaí, full riot gear with the shields, completely blocking off that side. There was like ambulances. I think there was an ambulance there. I think there was people injured as well, so couldn't go there. Then I tried to get on the O'Connell Bridge, completely blocked off. That's where there was buses on fire. There was loads of smoke. So eventually I got further down the quays and I got across that way, and got into the office. And was like a few people in the office, and I was like, I can't leave. Everything was down. Transport was down. No taxis. And then
but your
later
hair
on,
was looking good.
Well, I don't even know. And then later on, it started to get quiet later on. No way of getting home. So I said, I'm gonna just try my best. I'll walk down towards the other side of town. I might maybe get home that way. And I started to walk. It must have been around 10 o'clock at this point, and I had quietened on Talbot Street. And I cut under the railway bridge there, where Street Garda station is. So I literally get under the bridge, and I heard this shout to my right, and it's Mark Condren, our photographer, and Catherine Fegan. They were reporting on the story, and they said, they're coming your way. Looked around, this massive gang of about 20 youths running towards the Garda station and started hurling rocks at them, jumping on Garda cars, all of this. And then next second, all of the, then there was obviously Riot Gardaí responding to them. So they ran at them, but the youths ran our way. So then all of a sudden I was running away from Riot Police because they were running at us. Mark was like, run. And they were running at us because they don't know who's who. They're just running. They're just clearing the area. So they're clearing the area. So then I ended up back in the office. And then, long story short, one of the poor journalists, her poor boyfriend, ended up driving a couple of us home because he came to collect her, and there was no one way for anyone to get home.
Do you know what? It sounds like one of those. Do you ever have those dreams where you're trying to get somewhere?
Yeah.
And you just can't, and all these sort of mad scenarios happen.
I know.
And things just keep getting worse and worse, and you're trying to get, and then you wake up and it hasn't happened. But
and you're in your bed. But I got home after 12:30 or
and
something.
like you never even got to where are you going tonight?
I know. Well, this is the thing. And I felt a bit stupid in the hindsight because
going right into the middle of a riot.
Yeah, well, because obviously I knew we had been reporting on the incidents, but it just and in fairness, if I had to say it on Grafton Street, it would have been fine. It was going back that caused the issue. But it was just funny because obviously we do late hours here sometimes, and next day people were like, "Oh God, you must have been working late, were you?" And like Niall Donald wouldn't let me take that one. He said no. He said she was taking on the riders to get her hair done. So it was funny. But there's loads of those stories.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
People getting stuck.
But it was crazy. I mean, like, although I'm saying it's the 23rd of November, I know somebody else who was trying to get to a Christmas party and, ended up with this taxi driver practically spending the entire night with the taxi driver because they couldn't get around. I think they got stuck, and it was mental.
Oh my God.
But it just blew up out of that terrible incident earlier in the day.
It did.
Somebody's still before the courts in relation to that.
Yeah, so there's a guy still before the courts in relation to that. So so that hasn't progressed.
Yeah.
At the moment. But
so basically since then, look, this story and these riots and these photographs, and of course, it wasn't only the actual media that were, photographing and videoing this, because people in the crowds, and like yourself, even people that were out and about in town doing various things. So there was a huge amount of social media coverage of this, plus there was CCTV everywhere. This is right smack bang in the city centre. You can't walk a couple of inches without being caught on camera. So this has been a big part of the Garda investigation. These photographs, this video movement of people. They're adamant that they're going to keep at this. They do not ever want this to happen again.
No.
This was a huge embarrassment for Dublin across Europe.
Yeah, it was, because it was just the extent to which it shut down the whole city. And obviously there was a lot of criticism on the immediate response, which was defended by the guards and the government. And also there was injuries to guards, and it was just shocking, and it just looked like we descended into lawlessness. It was really like the Wild Wild West.
Yeah,
so nobody wants that to happen again. And in fairness, there has been a pretty thorough investigation. Like, they were talking about at least 50 Gardaí have been specialised onto this investigation, and then there's been 17,000 hours of CCTV harvested. Because as you said,
that's a huge job as well.
It's a huge job.
We've seen it in cases we've seen it in murder cases, in gangland murder cases, and it does, it's harder, I suppose, when you're trying to work out where people are coming from, but maybe they were trying to do this. They were probably identifying individuals and then trying to work out how they were getting into the city and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and it did, I suppose, it had a massive impact on people. People were afraid to come in. I know you were talking about Christmas party. There was Christmas parties for days and weeks after.
Why were the Christmas parties on the 23rd of November now?
I don't know. Some have them in January, I think.
So early, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it's better than having them in the new year when you're trying to be fit again and it's Christmas party. But yeah, there was millions of euro of damage caused to public transport, to businesses. I think there was 60 odd businesses impacted.
And were all the shop fronts on O'Connell Street damaged? I'm sure they were most
of them. A lot of them,
yeah.
Obviously Foot Locker was completely looted, and that's that's some of the images of people with Essex runners and stuff like that. So yeah, there was a lot of damage to shop fronts, and the Essex store was damaged as well, obviously. And then just a lot of kind of cleanup going on.
And in the aftermath of it, in the run up to Christmas, I think there was a huge amount of pressure on the police that this would not happen again.
Yeah.
And there were other kind of nights, I think, that there were worries, there was fears.
There was, there was, I think there was, was it the following, I remember because it was the toy show was on, I think it was the following Friday, there was and more gatherings, and there was police officer, or there was Gardai there, but at this is always the way, isn't it? The response is always really big in the immediate aftermath, and then it kind of gradually dies down. So, it's hard for it to strike the lightning to strike twice in that sense, because there's such a public light on it. And
I suppose, in fairness to the Gardai, this was something that blew up in an afternoon. This wasn't something that was kind of coming. It wasn't something that was being threatened for days, weeks, maybe, that people were, because you can often see that some of these marches and these, which have been contained in Dublin city centre, some of the marches from the north and that.
Of course, yeah. And there is protests. There was obviously protests, anti-immigrant protests, and there was been other kind of political protests that have turned violent. There was one on Grattan Street a couple of years ago and stuff. So we have had those things, and even in the aftermath, people would say, I saw, because we were on the news desk reporting on the Parnell Street incident and the violence, but I don't think people say they could see it going like that, but I don't know if anybody foresaw the streets, the whole city being shut down. It was literally chaotic, and it's really it's such a vulnerable feeling where you're you've no control over how to. So obviously people had more serious, people Gardai were injured and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people were just left shaking, because they're like, God, if I'm in this position, how do I get home?
Feels like Armageddon.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
There's no, and it's just, it's a hard thing to get your head around, because there's no public transport, and there's just these people on the streets, and some young people these days are just, I sound old now, but they're fearless.
Yeah.
And you could get hit by a rock, or you really don't.
And like you said, that moment when they came, the 20 of them came running, they didn't know who you were.
No.
They could have thought you were, and they didn't care.
Yeah, and they don't care. And the Gardai didn't know who we were, so they were just pushing everyone out of the way. And that's what Mark Condon said to me afterwards. Yeah, you don't want to get hit by one of those shields.
For sure not.
So
I mean, we will obviously, I'm sure all the media will also be looking at these to see if they can recognise anybody in it, and if anybody can be identified and asked what it is they're doing in those photographs. But nonetheless, the photographs are there, and most of them, or a lot of them, have hoods up. But the faces are pretty recognisable. I'm sure if you knew these people, there's very clear faces there, isn't there, in some of those pictures we've run on the Sunday World site in particular?
Yeah. No, there
Number 37 is pretty clear.
Yeah. No, there definitely are. And, so this is going to have, I would wager,
Number
to have
34
some kind of
in his Canada Goose blue coat is has no hood over his face either. Number 33 is a woman.
Yeah.
She has no hood over her face.
Yeah.
Or 25.
Yeah.
Some of them definitely, number 26 is the Essex.
Yes. Yeah.
He has a hood, but his whole face is exposed there.
No, there is. Yeah. No, he is. And I think it's a good thing for the guards too, because I think we've spoken about this before in the podcast about there's sometimes this aura of almost mistrust where, an investigation is going on and they're afraid to kind of make things public or to really utilise the media. But this is, I think, a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It's slightly bizarre, but I think it actually, as you said, it's kind of just like crime call, isn't it? Some of those people are really identifiable and they will get calls.
Absolutely, yeah. They will, no doubt.
Yeah, so...
Okay, well, Eimear, thank you very much. Talking to you later in the week.
Thank you, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.